All right, everybody. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the JK Experience. Got my main man, James Rivera, next to me. It's always good to see you, dude.
Always good to be here.
Yeah. I mean, we've been busy this week, and I have not been able to catch up with you very much. It's been just kind of one of those crazy weeks.
You know, sometimes it happens that we can sit down and speak uninterrupted for an hour.
Yeah.
And there are days when we sit down, like in the managing director meeting, we had like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it was like a revolving door in your office. So it happens.
Yeah. I mean, and it's been really, really busy. A lot of great things, a lot of challenging things, as always. I mean, we say that, it's funny. I listen to our podcast just to really see the direction that we're going to go and, you know, just always evaluating. And one thing that I think we're really, really consistent about is like, hey, dude, it's a challenging weekend. Like, I don't know, you know, it's been a challenging weekend. When I think we use the word challenging to really kind of cover up, like, this was a week, right?
Yeah. I think we need to change the name to the JK Challenge.
Oh, man. I'm already on one challenge right now, bro. Speaking of 31 days into this.
Tell me about it.
31 days into it, man. Love it. Yeah, love it. It has been awesome. One of the things that I've really appreciated being on this challenge is to see people that we've been able to have conversations with. And they're like, dude, that's what I need in my life right now. And so we're adding to this group, man. I mean, it's over doubled right now. And I mean, we're not even halfway done yet. We're close. Next Wednesday, we'll be halfway done with this program, but we're going to be, I mean, we're adding people every week, and it's really awesome to see like what it's doing in their lives. I never thought, that was one thing I never even thought of, is that this would make a positive impact in so many other people's lives too.
You know, it was funny. Last night we had a little get together. We call it our Oktoberfest, and we had a little get together. And it was funny watching the 75 harders.
Yeah,
not drinking. I mean, there was like 3 kegs of what I'm told is delicious beer.
Very good beer, yes.
And nobody was imbibing who was on the 75 hard. So.
Well, and you know, one of the things I love about it too is that, I mean, during the celebration, you know, we like to do that. That's a great social time for us. It's a great way for the agents to get together, to socialize, to just not just talk about business, but just to talk about life and the great things that are going on, and to relax and just kind of have that time, right? And it's always had adult beverages around there. And I was curious to know, for those that have accepted this challenge, you know, are they really going to struggle with it? Because as you know, I mean, that was one of my biggest caveats, is that I felt like I was really going to struggle with it. And I will tell you, like, I haven't met one person in this group that has gone and said, man, I tell you what, I don't know if I can do it, man. I really need a beverage. I need that drink. So it's really cool that they've been able to take control over that. And it's not trying to consume them. And the self-talk, the story they're telling themselves, has not overcome them so that they're going to break.
Yeah, so true. It's, you know, and this, I learned from this too, talking to one of the guys that you recruited. It's apparently the 75 hard is just the beginning, right? It's a longer term thing. Yeah. That's just kind of the first step. So I don't even know what that looks like for
yeah. Supposedly there's 3 there's 3 phases to this. I don't really know too much. I know the second one a little bit, but I really haven't done it. But you're right. I mean, this isn't just, I think that's one of the things I love about this. This isn't one of those programs where you're just going to do it and then that's it, and you just go back to normal life. I mean, once you go through it, you really can't ever look at life again the same.
Got it.
And, you know, like, there's all these fads, right? There's all these different diets, and there's always these different motivational things that, you know, you do it for a certain period and then you just go back to normal life. I think once you go through this process, you realize how much of your life you're truly missing by not doing the things that you were challenged to do during this time period. And I'll tell you, like, I've had so many conversations with people like, dude, I can never see myself going back to da 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 da. Now, you have to stay disciplined. You bet. Right? You have to stay motivated in those areas. But when you experience how life can truly be when you are living in these disciplines, you never want to go back. It's awesome. And having accountability and people that you're going through that with, what a great accomplishment to get through it. And to have people on a journey with you.
Yeah. And I think that's watching you outside looking in. It's been refreshing watching those people come on and kind of inspire and remotivate you. Yeah. Right. So that's been kind of fun. I've watched that happen.
Yeah. Oh,
so that's good.
I guess I didn't notice that, but yeah,
safety in numbers.
All right. Hey, I really want to dive into this thing today about what the story you're telling yourself is. And of course, obviously everything that we talk about on this show is stuff that we're going through or I'm going through. And there's a gal out there and her name is Brene Brown. Many of you guys know it. She's got a number of books out there. She's got a really great Netflix production. And I'd really highly encourage you guys, Brene Brown. It's about an hour long, hour and 20-minute long. But I was watching this the other night with Kate, and man, I walked away with some really great tools, I think, that I'm going to be implementing in my life. And one of them is about the story you're telling yourself in your life. And how many of us have heard that before? How many of us have been challenged by that before, where somebody says, well, all right, dude, what's the story you're telling yourself?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, all the time. I mean, you hear that.
Yeah. And for some reason, I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I had more research with it. I don't know if I had a better definition of it, but I was able to really, I heard it in a different perspective, that I was able to see how it applied in my life, not just in business, but like in my life in general. I was able to finally kind of have that light bulb click on and go, well, that's what they mean when they say, what's the story you're telling yourself?
Yeah. I think we all get hung up on that, and it started to just be some kind of a cliched thing that we would say, hey, is that the story you're telling yourself? But I think if you do look deeper into this, now I haven't watched this special yet, but I think if you do look deeper into this, it's a valid question.
Right. Well, and what I want to know why too is we're, as a human being, we naturally always go to the negative.
Yeah.
Very few people naturally just instinctively go to the positive, right? I mean, it's something that has to be trained. You have to be conscious of it. If you're going to go to the positive, it's something you have to work on all the time, but we constantly always go back to the negative. So when something in our life doesn't happen the way we want it to happen, the first thing that we tell ourselves is something more than likely very negative.
Yeah. We do it to ourselves, that negative self-talk, and it doesn't even have to be rooted in any kind of truth. We just naturally go there.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's dive into that a little bit. When you're in business, let's just say that you're just in business, and we are constantly out there trying to grow, or we're either recruiting people or we're talking to people and helping them grow in their business. Anytime we go into a meeting, there's always a story that we tell ourselves before we get into that meeting. And I know for many years, as I was trying to grow the company, when I was having those conversations with, at this time, it was let's just say agents outside of our company, man, there was a story I was always telling myself of like, oh, this is the objection they're gonna say. This is why they wouldn't want to come. I'm too young to be able to recruit them. They don't like me because because maybe I am successful. You know what I mean? There was a litany of things that I was already defeating myself before I even got into the conversation to just truly see where they were at and why we were a great choice for them.
Yeah. And how many times in those conversations did you come up with objections that weren't even valid objections, nothing they brought?
Right. Yeah. And it's so true. I mean, if you already go into that, and we've talked about this before, but if you already go into that meeting already defeated, dude, you have no chance of winning that meeting. I mean, there's always the unicorn every once in a while, and you get your act together and you actually end up coming to an agreement. But most of the time, you're not going to go in there because you're not empowered. You don't believe in what you're going to be providing. You don't believe in the story you're going to tell if you've already defeated yourself in your mind. And the story you're telling yourself is so impactful. And I'm telling you, on a personal note, I mean, you and I just discussed this about a situation with me earlier this week where I allowed myself to be a little vulnerable, and because I really needed this meeting with somebody that was a part of my life for many years, a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And when that meeting didn't happen, the story that I was telling myself was so defeating. The self-talk that I started having with myself, it was terrible.
Yeah.
Because I went to those places where we all go to about not being good enough, having shame, feeling guilty, not being qualified. I mean, you name it, I was going down that litany of it. And I'm a pretty dang positive dude. I'm pretty confident in who I am for the most part. But I started to retract back to that old Josh that I've worked so hard not to be like.
Yeah, well, I want to talk a little bit more. I think you need to give just a little bit more, as much as you're willing to, a little more background on this. As far as you were reaching out to this person on a professional level. It wasn't
Yes.
anything other than it was like, hey man, I need a resource that you have. I want you to share some stuff with me. That's all I'm looking for. But we do this to ourselves, right? Because here you were, you feel like you left that relationship. I mean, you guys have been kind of away from one another for a while, right?
Yeah, that friendship. Yep.
Yeah, friendship. And so you guys had been away from each other for a while, but you thought you left it in a pretty good place.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's no different than, I mean, let's rewind to when we were courting, right? When I was trying to woo Mandy, right? When she would fall radio silent, I would instantly go to the worst places. Oh,
Yeah.
she must have found some other guy, right? She's,
Yeah.
she's texting some other guy right now, or she's out with some. No, she was just in class, or she was doing something with her kids. And so because of that, we always go. And again, I like to think I'm a pretty confident guy, right? When it comes to stuff like that. But I went to the automatic lowest of lows, and it's hard to get back out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. All right. So I've, for full disclosure, basically, so I'm writing this book, and through this, through the identification, I guess, or I don't know if that's a word, through identifying the people that I need to align with through this book and the research that I'm trying to do, one of my past coaches, when I was in baseball, is now has got a great position with a Major League Baseball club. And I was wanting to I wanted to have a meeting with him. I just wanted to, first of all, I want to catch up with him, because it's always obviously great to see, how successful people are doing. And, he'd been grinding for a lot of years, and now he's at the highest level, and it's just awesome, right? So just really cool. And he was an impact in my life. I mean, he was a great coach, mentor in my life. And so I want to reach out. And for full disclosure, once again, I don't think that there was any malicious intent on his end to not be a good dude about it. It's just, like I said, it was the story that I was telling myself when I reached out and those meetings weren't able to be had. The stories that I was telling myself is that I wasn't good enough, that I was just common folk, that no, I shouldn't be pursuing this, that no one wants to hear from me. All of those things that are just so negative, that I know lots of people do that. I know for a fact there's so many people that go to that negative self-talk, and it's not warranted. I know that's what I want. The message that I want to come from this is that it wasn't warranted. Did I feel bad for myself? Absolutely. Did I sulk for a little bit? Yeah. Was I pissed off? Yes, I was, but I had to recover from that, because I went back to, from there, I basically had to come to Jesus meeting with myself, literally looking at myself in the mirror saying, don't believe the lies you're telling yourself. Yeah. Don't believe the story that you just said, because that's not the truth. You have no idea the truth, and it doesn't matter what the truth is on their end. That's not the truth in your life.
Hey, you don't know what the narrative is on that other end, right? I mean, maybe the guy is just super crazy busy. Who knows? Let's, like, in a crazy stretch, maybe the guy's listening to this podcast right now, right? You don't know that. Maybe he's like, man, I'm getting my cup filled by Josh because I'm tuning into his podcast. We don't know that, right?
Yeah. And he feels terrible right now. He's going to text me like, dude, I'm so sorry, right?
Yeah. Wait, did you just get a text?
Yeah, right.
So we've got to be cautious of that, because we never know what the true narrative is, right? And we're our own biggest critics. We always are. So it's real easy to go to that spot where, oh man, I'm not, you know what? I'm not on his level anymore. I'm not one of those guys anymore. So, I mean, he doesn't have time for me. No. I mean, it could be a million other things, right? It could be that he is in the midst of his own personal struggle right now. Yeah. And that's consuming everything that he's got.
Yeah. Or he could just be a really bad communicator.
Yeah, maybe he's just horrible at communicating.
I don't know. And I think that, honestly, I mean, I say that in all seriousness. I mean, it's funny, but at the same time, it truly is. I mean, there's really people that are bad communicators. And over text, how many of us have ever blown up over a text because you felt somebody was saying something over it, and it's just truly not what the intent was, right? So once again, it wasn't about the other person. And I think, unfortunately, when you listen to the story that you're telling yourself, it isn't about the other person.
No.
It is all about you, and you need to remember that. It has nothing to do with the other person. The story you're telling yourself, the self-talk that you're listening to, it has to change. You have to go back down to, why are you feeling the way you are? What are you about to change that? And then really, truly, like the sources, like, how do you empower yourself not to believe the stories that you tell yourself?
And we talk to the agents in our office about this very thing, right? There are times when we're going to have to deliver bad news to buyers and sellers, right?
Right.
We have no control over how they're going to react to that. But at the end of the day, we cannot own their emotions and make them ours. Yeah. Right? We have to separate that out. Yeah. So the proof's in the pudding right there. We talk about it a lot, but then when it hits closer to home, it's a little harder to do, right?
Yeah, right. And it doesn't just apply to our one company, which is real estate.
Sure.
I mean, I literally just had this conversation with two of our managers in another company last week about the story they were telling themselves about the conversation that we hadn't even had. Like they were already setting themselves up for either failure or a bad scenario. And like they didn't even give me the opportunity to have the conversation with them and show them that that wasn't the case at all. Like this wasn't going to happen, and this was not what was going to, like the intent that you thought was going to happen, it wasn't going to happen. And when they finally did come, which was unfortunate that they waited so long, that they already made all these judgments, that they were already trying to make these decisions, by the time they came and actually saw me, when they found out the truth, they were just so relieved going, dude, for the last week, I've been telling myself this story about how this conversation was going to go, and it went completely in the opposite direction. And I just feel like crap that I didn't come before you and actually have this conversation so that I could have fixed this problem a long time ago. So it's not just necessarily about the one that you're saying yourself. It's about what other people are telling themselves about a conversation possibly that they need to have with you, and they've already defeated themselves.
Yeah. So it's funny how many of our podcasts, how many of our episodes are interwoven, right? Look, we kind of touched on this just briefly when we were talking about leveling up, right? Why are you not leveling up? And a big part of the reason we're not leveling up is that negative self-talk, right? It was a story we're telling ourselves is the reason we're not leveling up.
Yeah.
So that is a great segue into yet another podcast.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I don't really, how do I wrap this up? Because at the end of the day, we're all going to continue to keep telling ourselves the stories. And you've got to, first of all, as soon as you identify it, you've got to take control of that. You've got to see how hurtful, and you've got to see how painful, and you got to see how wrong that is, not only for yourself, because if you're doing it, guess what? Other people in your life are doing it. The other people in your life are telling themselves stories as well too. So you've got to take control of that. When you master that, like when you decide this is no longer the way that I'm going to look at things, that I'm no longer going to be that negative talk in myself, in my life, it just changes your vision, and it changes the impact that you can make in other people, and it changes how you lead yourself.
Yeah, so I have to know this before we cut loose. I want to know at what point, what was it that you did that made you all right with this, or made you realize, hey, I got to stop this, right? This is all on me. What was it? Was it sharing it with somebody else? Was it just kind of talking it out in your own head? What process did you take?
Yeah. So once that happened, basically I had to have those internal conversations with myself. And I had to say, first of all, is the story true? And I'm like, no. Definitively, is the story true? No, it's not true. I don't know that for a fact, right? I didn't have a conversation with them. I truly don't have no idea. So I had to realize that the story was not true, what I was telling myself. The second thing is like, okay, are you going to run into stumbling blocks along the way of trying to create a great book? Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so I am. So would this be a stumbling block? Absolutely. Okay, so I've already identified that I'm going to stumble. I've already identified that it's not going to be an easy road. So could this be the one right here where it's like, all right, maybe that door closes? It is. Should it stop you from truly why you are doing this? No, it should not. Right? So I started asking myself some yes and no questions because I didn't want to get into the emotions of it. Right? Yeah. So I started saying yes and no questions. And then from there, it's just like, okay, what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, I'm not going to let it defeat me. I'm not going to let that self-talk happen to me again with this situation. And so I made a decision. I just said, I got to stop right now. And then I really just slept on it, to be honest with you. I just said, you know what? I'm going to sleep on this. And then when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to see how I feel. I woke up the next morning. I felt better. But then I went right into my morning routine. Right? And my morning routine is to fill my cup. My morning routine is to have my God time. My morning routine is to do the things that I know that I'm driven to do, that is my purpose. Mm-hmm. And I just started focusing on the positive stuff of that, right? All of those things that is a routine. And we talk about this. Why is a morning routine so important? Because oftentimes the night before was challenging, or the day before was really challenging. And if you do not fill your cup first, if you do not pay attention to the things that you need first, you're going to allow those emotions from the previous day back into this day, and it's going to ruin that day. And I was not willing to do that. Yeah.
It's funny how yes and no questions carry a lot less emotion than what if questions, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's great. I think that's a pro tip right there.
Yeah. And I wasn't going to go, well, why?
Yeah. Why and what if? Those are big emotional questions.
I didn't want to, because I didn't want to put the energy into it either, by the way. I didn't know, I didn't want to say a justification of why I felt that way. It was either yes or no.
You got it.
Yeah. All right, guys. Hey, I hope that was helpful, man. I hope that you start paying attention to the stories that you're telling yourself, and you can see how detrimental they can be to you. But when you start to own them, when you actually start to control them, they can actually be a fantastic source for how you're going to be living the best that you can. All right, guys. Have an awesome rest of your day.